Hi, I'm Jeff Goodman, and this is the Good and Plenty podcast on the CLNS Media Network. Suns veteran Jared Dudley and New York Times NBA insider Marc Stein are joining us today to talk about free agency, the NBA awards, and yes, even Bill Russell flipping off Charles Barkley. Just wanted to let you know that you can now find us on iTunes. Search Good and Plenty and subscribe. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think. You can also find the show on clnsmedia.com and on Stitcher. Let's get to Jared Dudley. All right, now pleased to welcome a guy that I've known a long time, since I think he was about, 17 years old. Did a lot of bad things probably back then. Jared Dudley, former BC Eagle. I'm not going to read off all the teams that you played for in the NBA, Jared, all right?
Not too many. Mostly with Phoenix. I've had a couple of stints. That means I'm still pushing this long career, keeping it going.
I want to know why you made $10 million this year and it drops down to 9.5 next year. What's up with that?
When I first signed my deal, Ryan McDonough wanted to front load it a little bit the first year. So if they wanted to go after free agent like this summer, $1 million could matter, could not matter. So, it doesn't matter to me. It's all the same.
$500,000 less. You're going to have to cut back a little bit.
Yes. Hey, there's one thing about me. I definitely know how to save. So, I'm not going to be one of those statistics, and I think the NBA, the NBPA has done a good job of helping guys handle their money finally.
Well, listen, your whole deal is, and I've said this all along, you've set yourself up pretty well for life after retirement. I don't know what you're going to do, if you're going to go into coaching or you're going to go into broadcasting, but I think you could do either and be successful on whichever one you want to do. What are you leaning towards? Any idea?
Yeah, leaning towards coaching.
Okay.
At first, it kind of swayed me early on with the media. For one, I think that the NBA game is changed in the sense of they're looking for the new generational coach, one that can relate to players, one that's been played in the game. Good thing about me, I play with a lot of these young stars: Booker, Giannis, Chris Paul. I know he's not young into the game. Blake Griffin, obviously Nash. So my experiences were from old to young to the youth of different players: John Wall, Bradley Beal, all stars. So for me, I think it's that. And I think that they're looking for players like myself that are investing in the game, that have IQs, that get just respect, but yet in a cool way can coach. Because in this NBA, if you don't have respect, I don't care if you have all the best X's and O's. If they don't respect you, then they're not going to play hard for you and not give it all that you need.
All right, so then I agree with you, but let me take the other approach. And a guy here in Boston like Brad Stevens, and how do you think he got the respect? Because didn't play, coached in college, but that generally doesn't mean anything when you get in the NBA. How do you think he got the respect that he has? Where tonight he was one of the finalists for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, no, I definitely would. And I'll throw a couple other, which is Eric Spoelstra and the coach from Dallas, Rick Carlisle. Yeah. Those three coaches, I say they're similar in the way that it's accountability from the top to bottom. In this NBA, as you gave my salary out there, there's a lot of coaches that play guys with the high salary, and that's not right. You got to play the best guys. And one thing about Brad Stevens, I heard him on the sideline. I see him take out Jaylen Brown off a missed assignment. It's accountability where, hey, if the backup behind you is playing better than you, he will play more minutes than you in that game. So he coaches from game to game, not by player to player. So when it comes to the team, we can respect that because he'll bench the best player. If Isaiah Thomas, even though maybe scoring-wise, he might take him out and go small, go big, depending on the team. And as a player, you can respect that, hey, every player's not going to be good every time. Now, a superstar like LeBron and Harden, so obviously might change, but I think for me, it's accountability, and I think it's their system. All those coaches I just named have a system in place where everyone can be successful. And so that's huge, and I think players love that, and they see that, and they want to play for guys like that.
All right, so we're going to start. The NBA awards just ended. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. The highlight for me was Bill Russell flipping off Charles Barkley, right? I mean, wasn't that clearly the best part of the show?
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, Bill, he can do no wrong in our eyes. I think that was just a funny time.
I mean, listen, anytime you get Bill Russell, and at first it was almost like, I don't know if you did the same thing, but it was almost like a double take. Like, did he really do that?
Right. I know, because because at awards show people only act like that, and he can blame it on his age and get away with anything. So he'll be good.
That is the key. Once you get older, Jared, and I'm not quite there yet, but maybe, in a few years I'll be there. It doesn't matter. Once you get older, like, you can do whatever you want. My dad can do whatever he wants in his 70s, and, it's kind of looked upon completely different. So what else stood out to you tonight? Harden, MVP.
I think the Ben Simmons over Mitchell. I think that in the NBA world it was split. I think people respect both of them definitely. I think if you ask most players, they would have gave it to Mitchell, maybe 60-40, 55-45.
Why?
I just think that in the Western Conference, you get more respect doing what he did, and he was the main focal point of scoring every night, having to create. I know that he played against us. I know we weren't a good team this year in Phoenix. He played the point guard, got 40 points, 10 assists. I think what he does stands out more. Ben Simmons has another guy like Embiid to fall off on, a veteran team. I think no one expected Gordon Hayward leaving, him having to fill those shoes. They trade Rodney Hood. I think that he just gets a little bit more praise when it comes to the NBA world. But I think the difficulty, I think it's an advantage, him getting a redshirt year, going through a weight room and seeing the NBA up close and front and learning the game. I think it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, that definitely helped him. No question, Jared. Like, you wouldn't have thought so because obviously he's coming back from a major injury. But Brett Brown said it to me last year, the talks they had throughout the year, the fact that he could sit down with them and kind of learn the game from a different vantage point. I would give the edge to Mitchell, honestly, more than anything, because I think he was better on the defensive end. And I think that's a part of the game that just, to me, doesn't get enough credit. Same thing with Harden winning the MVP. Like, I don't know if LeBron should have won it or Anthony Davis, but those guys are way better in the defensive end. It's not even close. And I feel like that part is sometimes just completely overlooked.
Anthony Davis for sure. LeBron picks and chooses his spot.
Yes.
Anthony Davis was phenomenal all season. I just think when it comes to Harden, he's been so close. And this year, their team by far was better than any other team regular season-wise, including Golden State. He played, with Mike D'Antoni, he's going to play, the most minutes. He rarely come out. I know that him and C.P. Howard, and he literally, like LeBron, is creating 60% of their offense. I know they had Chris Paul this year, and he helps out a lot of that department. I think this is the only year I think winning should count for the MVP. That's why 1 year I like Kawhi over a lot of people, even though his numbers offensively wasn't. But like you said, defensively, he was so good that year. I think when it's close, I understand why you go to the best offensive player, but someone like Kawhi, and the gap between them and the next guy defensively is a big gap.
All right, so let's go free agency. That's a big thing here everybody wants to know about. Starts Sunday, midnight. And the big one is LeBron. I think it's a two-horse race. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I think it's Lakers or Cleveland. If you're LeBron, and I know you're not, nobody is, but what do you do in this situation? Do you go to L.A. and take a chance? Do you wait to see what they have there before you make any sort of commitment? Because you can do that. You can play the waiting game and see what the Lakers do first.
Well, the thing about it is LeBron, he waits for no one. He calls his own shots, and obviously when you're the face of the league and have it. So what LeBron is doing and his team is seeing the free agents, what's going on. So a call's been made to Paul George. I'm pretty sure a call's been made to Kawhi Leonard's camp, even though it's not directly to Kawhi. LeBron's not going to L.A. by himself. And so if he can go with someone like Paul George, and we know everyone keeps talking about it, I think LeBron wants to leave. I mean, I think LeBron doesn't want to leave. I think he knows that he has to leave. So let me get there. Let me clarify that. He would love to stay in Cleveland. If he could get Paul George to Cleveland, he would stay. I think that he really wants to end his career. His thing is, I'm tired of getting beat in finals, and how can we improve? Golden State's not getting any worse. At least with the Lakers, if you come with Paul George, no. Golden State will still be favored, maybe even Houston. But you have 2 or 3 guys that with Ball, Ingram, and Kuzma who could either A, improve because they're so young, or B, they can get you some good assets. They can get you a star player in the future in the next year or two. So I think that's where he would lean towards. I do think of Philly just because of the connection of Rich Paul and Ben Simmons, how LeBron hangs out with Ben Simmons to a certain degree. He's a part. When Rich Paul talks to me, both of them, and to kind of actually mentor Ben Simmons as the player he needs to be, so then he can take over the whole clutch sport. So I think that's a dark horse. I know we've talked about that. So I think it's really a 3-team race when it comes to all them three.
Can anybody challenge Golden State next year? I mean, I guess Houston did this year before Chris Paul got hurt, but like Boston, you look at them and Danny Ainge hasn't done anything. They got Hayward coming back. They got Kyrie. You saw Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Horford. Can they challenge Golden State if they're 100% or no?
What's going on behind the scenes is, Daryl Morey's not only just going after LeBron. If they get Paul George, they have a chance. I think that might be like his third option. But if they can kind of convince him to do that, they could. I mean, they're already, like you said, close this year. I think that they would be the favorites. Even if wherever LeBron went, they would be the favorites. Houston. So that's one team. I think they need out of Paul George to take that next step. I think Houston will obviously be there next year. Boston for sure. With those two, I think you have to see how they get the injuries. But we saw with Tatum and Brown, those are two studs. Rozier, Boston. If you told me Boston was in the finals next year, and once you get to the finals, and as good as they are defensively, you always give yourself a chance. And that's where I think they're next year. I know they would love to eventually get their hands on Anthony Davis. I think with their assets, they're setting themselves up really, really good to get him in a couple of years. So those two teams, I think that I don't care what LeBron team he goes to. It's tough for Philly. I don't think they're ready. It's tough for the Lakers. The only chance he would have if somehow Kawhi got traded to the Lakers. And I don't think that would happen right now. I think that's more September or even in February before the trade deadline, and LeBron won't know.
Did this whole thing with Kawhi shock you as much as it did me? I mean, you're a San Diego kid, so you I don't know how well you know Kawhi. I don't know if anybody knows Kawhi that well because he doesn't say a whole lot. He's kind of the opposite of you personality-wise. But I've always said I've known him since he was a sophomore at San Diego State. I don't know him, but he's kind of the same now as he was then, which is doesn't care about media attention, doesn't really want to talk, just wants to work, play the game, win, doesn't say a word. So this whole thing has shocked me the way this has kind of gone down.
It shocked me because it's the Spurs, but it doesn't shock me Kawhi or any other NBA player because of this. I had this when I was with the Clippers. As you saw, Isaiah Thomas had it with Boston. When you feel, I don't care if it's your team or not, if you feel that your team medical staff diagnosed or put you in harm's way to eventually get hurt, you will always look at that organization a day. You will never if it's, I had a fracture in my kneecap that wasn't diagnosed till after the season when I did a couple x-rays doing it. I'm telling the team something's wrong. I'm going out there playing. Then I see this afterwards when I knew, let the team know for months. Kawhi comes back, gets re-hurt. He feels like it's misdiagnosed. Every team cares for a player and doesn't want them to get hurt. But yes, there's pressure to win. In Boston side, even the Spurs, as you saw the comments Tony Parker and some of those guys made, they run him out there. Now, anyone can, hey, a couple weeks, okay, he missed 5-10 games. But after the 2025 game, you're asking questions. When Booker at the end of the year was missing games, you don't think people were asking, hey, what game? And we're not even a team was getting close to making the playoffs. Imagine Spurs where, you saw last year before he hurt his ankle, they're getting ready to win game one in the Western Conference Final. That team is thinking championship. So, they're thinking about a contender. So it doesn't shock me when it's dealing with an injury and you feel like the team doesn't have your best interests.
All right, so let's move on to your Suns a little bit here. Give you a little bit of a plug. Deandre Ayton. I saw him the first time 3 years ago, and I really questioned, his work ethic. He came from the Bahamas, so much more talented than everybody else. Didn't have to play hard. But I thought he learned how to play hard this year at Arizona under Sean Miller. How much had you seen him this year? I assume you watched him a bunch because you knew you'd have a chance to be in the mix for that number one pick. What do you think of him?
Hey, I actually, Deandre Ayton came to my high school basketball camp in San Diego 2 years. He was actually played under my high school coach, Zach Jones, at Balboa Prep, and came to my two, Jalen Hands, had a lot of different people there. So I saw him early, sophomore year, junior year. Like you said, more talented than everyone. Sometimes you question his motor. Is he playing hard enough? But skill set, we had all the tools. Even then, he didn't cut threes. Post game, not like a crazy Embiid about it. the game was just so easy. I thought his body matured, how physical he was. I thought he played harder, like you said, this year. I thought his touch and the way he talks is you feel like his desire to get better. And that's the key. These young kids is like, how bad do they want it? Like, I'm going to schedule his workout schedule. You know why he's good. You can see his work ethic and how it is. And so there's a time to play and have fun. There's a time to work. So I know on this team, when he has Booker and you're going to see him in the gym, it's only going to force. It's kind of like the Kobe Shaq thing, where the difference is this Kobe is Booker and he's older.
Does Booker go that hard off the court? Does he work that hard? He
works. Yes, he does. He works here at the Nike facility here in L.A. He's in the weight room, shooting. I don't know if he plays a lot. I know. Last year I saw some videos, but even in the summertime, I live on the same street as him, kind of about a mile down, and literally a week or 2 weeks off, and he was with what's his name, coach from Alabama, Avery Johnson, his son, and they were running in the heat. It's 105, 110, and he's running outside, and it's 2.5 weeks since season was over. He was already working out in the heat. So when it comes to working, getting better, and if you're not on that, he'll definitely call you out.
Hey, who's going back to free agency real quick? Who's the free agent that you think isn't going to be talked about enough going into this? Everybody's going to talk about LeBron, Chris Paul, Boogie
DeAndre
Cousins.
Jordan.
Who's the guy?
DeAndre Jordan. The reason why I don't think he's talking about defensively, he's a Rudy Gobert defensive impact, like a Capella. He got better on his free throws, his lobs. He impacts the game. The reason why Clippers had a chance to make the playoffs after trading Chris Paul and Blake Griffin was DeAndre Jordan. They could have the guards score all the points. It's him impacting the defense. So if he goes to a team that's close, like if I was Toronto, I'd be trying to get my hands on him. A team that needs an athletic, if I was Milwaukee, trying to get my hands on him. He's an impact all-star type player that can change the game defensively, and his rolling is huge.
All right, last question, and then I'm going to let you go. I know you probably want to go out. 8:30 out there. Who's the player that you've played with or against or whatever that you think would be the best coach down the road? And you can't name yourself.
For sure. A lot of people say Chris Paul. I don't. I think he's a little too emotional for that. He definitely has the knowledge of the game. A lot of reports have that. Let me see. Who would be a good coach?
Doesn't Chris Paul too have a standard almost where he'll call guys out too much and he wants everybody to kind of live up to his standard of work and work ethic, or no?
Well, he's not when it comes to work ethic. It's his standard of how to play the game and thinking. So you got to have a high IQ. And if you don't have a high IQ, sometimes his thinking can cause a little friction of where you're supposed to go, and he'll let you know about that. But I think that you got to have an even balance as a coach. You can't be too high, too low. The emotional coaches really, those aren't really the top coaches here in the NBA, so I think it'd be tough. I think one player I played with who's actually working on it right now is Willie Green. He's in the third, I think he's like the third or fourth assistant out there behind the bench in Golden State. Under Doc, he played under, had about 10, 11-year career. Just has a good way about himself and his communication. Every team he's been on, he's been one of the best teammates. P. Lou was the same way. Tyrone Lue, when he was in Boston with Doc behind the bench, then got moved up in front and then started working really, really hard with these guys here in the Clippers and got his chance in Cleveland. So Willie Green, keep an eye on him. And so Luke Walton did it. Willie Green will be a coach here in the next 4 or 5 years.
All right, well, listen, Dudley, I appreciate it, man. I'm glad you're not going to go in the media because that may save my job for a little bit longer. I think you'll be a hell of a coach. NBA or college? NBA?
It's NBA. Unless somehow I go out to my alma mater and help BC out, I'm thinking NBA.
All right, well, listen, appreciate it, my man, and we'll talk soon, all right?
All right, anytime, man. Thanks a lot.
You got it. Later. All right, now pleased to welcome in my former colleague, now with the New York Times, Marc Stein. Marc, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
I got you up early today, huh? I know you had a late night. You've had a late week. What do you think, first of all, NBA awards? Anything stand out to you? Anything that you kind of disagreed with, or just kind of par for the course?
Well, obviously, just the fact that it's an award show, I think, has got people riled up. Some of it was undeniably awkward, but some of it was also pretty good pretty good TV. Obviously, the whole Bill Russell moment, quite hilarious. And then, you know, you see things like the Dikembe Mutombo Award that are, you know, certainly moving. So, I mean, the show, I don't know, the whole show, I'm just not sold on the need for a show, but they're trying stuff, I guess. You know, it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem last night, too, was you had guys that honestly didn't have big personalities winning the awards. I mean, Ben Simmons doesn't really say much. James Harden says virtually nothing. I mean, you know, a lot of the guys who went up there didn't have the personalities. If you had Joel Embiid talking more, maybe there would have been some things to take out of that would have been funny. Or, you know, obviously Kevin Durant a couple of years ago when he wins the MVP award, it gets more emotional. You didn't have really enough of that last night.
Yeah, no, I totally buy that. And, you know, it's a small venue where they hold it. I mean, it happens, you know, these are regular season awards that happen so late after the season. Look, I know the league does love the fact that, you know, they always hated that pests like you and I would try to find out who the award winners are, and they would leak, and it was hard for them to control that. I think they do love the fact that these things all kind of, they can control it now, and it all, you know, it doesn't leak out early. And, you know, I'm sure I'm sure you're right that if we had a great speech or two last night, maybe people's opinions would be different. But, you know, I think part of it just comes down to the fact that these are regular season awards and we don't find out about them until after the playoffs. And so some of the moment is lost.
No doubt. Well, the moment's coming up of free agency. LeBron. Everybody wants to know where he's going, how long it's going to take. You know, I'm turning on the TV every day, and it's the same thing. People talking about nothing because there's really nothing to say yet about where LeBron's going. And I don't think a ton of people have inside information. I think their camp's pretty tight for the most part in what LeBron's going to do. What's your take right now if you had to put a percentage on where he ends up? Where do you think it is?
I'm glad I don't, because I'm with you. I don't think any of us really know. You know, we can sit here and say the Lakers are the clear favorite. You know, Las Vegas has. The Lakers are the clear favorite. Or we could say the Cavs have a shot to keep him because none of these options are perfect. But the reality is we are, at this point, all guessing. The season ended June 8th. LeBron has gone away. You know, we've had no contact with him. It's the earliest the finals have ended since, I think, 86. So he will have had 3 full weeks to really dig into his options. But we're just going to have to wait. I mean, this is going to be a different process than it was the first 2 times. And, you know, look, the one thing he made very clear when he was up at the podium after Game 4, after the finals, that family considerations are going to be bigger than they ever have, bigger than they've ever been. But, you know, and I think that's why people are saying it's Lakers or Cleveland, because everyone knows that his family is comfortable in those 2 places. But it's not the answer anyone wants. But, you know, we're talking on a Tuesday, free agency is Sunday. You know, we're going to have to wait a little bit.
Mark, why wouldn't he look harder at Houston? You know, where his boy Chris Paul's there. He hasn't won a title. Obviously, you got James Harden. That's the natural place where you could knock off Golden State and win another championship, but you don't, or you really have heard lately how it's probably not going to be Houston at the end of the day.
Well, to me, it's twofold there. One, I've always been in the camp that says don't leave the East. Whatever you do, don't leave the East, because as good as Boston was without Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, and as dangerous as Philadelphia looks when you kind of scope their long-term outlook, it's still only 2 teams. And the East does not have that depth that just scares you like the West, where, you know, even in the first round, you might get a matchup that you don't like. I mean, you know, Utah made such strides this season. Denver has a really interesting future with the team they've put together. So if LeBron goes to Houston, and it raises the question of how much of the team they would have to give up to make the salary cap room to get him, because I don't think there's a team out there that's ready to just take Ryan Anderson off Daryl Morey's hands and make the salary cap math easier. I don't know that it's the slam dunk that it might appear to be on paper. So Houston, obviously, James Harden's the reigning MVP, and LeBron and Chris Paul are best friends, and it certainly makes sense on some level. But I don't know. It doesn't surprise me that we kind of heard these rumbles of hesitation there.
So last year it was Sam Presti who made the kind of shocking move nobody was expecting. He goes out and does what people thought was, make the move he had to make, right? I mean, roll the dice, trade Oladipo and Sabonis, and you get Paul George, and you're in business. Then you add Melo. It doesn't look so good now, but who's that team? I mean, can you foresee somebody, and I know, I'm asking you to kind of pull out your crystal ball, but who's that team that might pull out a surprise and shock some people this free agency?
Well, I guess if we're looking for some sort of parallel situation to a Paul George trade, it would be a Kawhi Leonard trade.
Yep.
The Spurs made pretty clear on draft night that they're not in the mode yet to move him. If they reach that point, if they say, you know what, we can't make this work, we can't keep this guy, would someone do what Oklahoma City did and trade for Kawhi, knowing that he, all signs point to him wanting to go to LA in the summer of 2019? How much do you give up in that scenario? I think certainly people will look at Boston and ask, would Danny Ainge do it? And we know Danny Ainge is a gambler, Trader Danny. He's not afraid of anything. But really, how, are you really willing to sacrifice top shelf A-list assets when you might not be able to keep Kawhi George? Now, Oklahoma City, their trade was a huge dice roll, but also a no-brainer at the same time. I mean, it's weird. It's kind of both, because they had no guarantee of keeping Paul George. I've been among the voices out there saying that they have a much better chance of keeping him now than anyone thought when the season ended, but that's still not a guarantee. No one in Oklahoma City thinks it's a done deal. They're not going to believe it until he says he's staying, because the Lakers threat is so real. So Oklahoma City still has a lot of work to do, but they didn't give up a first-round pick in that deal.
Right.
Oladipo, Domantas Sabonis, those are good players, but you would, that's a risk you can live with when you're not even giving up a first-round pick. Presumably San Antonio is not going to just give away Kawhi Leonard for two players without some sort of draft compensation.
No, you're right. Think about it. If it's Boston, you can make the comparison Oladipo and Jaylen Brown, but then if you're Boston, you're probably going to have to give up that Sacramento pick and a whole lot more to make the money work as well, where you're right. And Oklahoma City is a small market team. They weren't set up like Boston is. So if Danny Ainge has to make a move here, which he really doesn't, he could sit tight, see what happens when Hayward and Kyrie come back, and see how this team kind of gels.
I mean, the patient play just paid off for Danny. Everyone on the outside was screaming at him, make a trade, make a trade. When are you going to do something already? And he waited, and he waited, and he waited, and he got Kyrie Irving. So I think he just kind of proved the point that rushing doesn't necessarily guarantee success.
Yeah, no, a year ago at this time, people were killing him. Absolutely killing him. And he got Hayward, and that kind of started the ball rolling, and then the trade to get Kyrie. What's going on in Philly now? Colangelo's out. Brett Brown's kind of got power. Are they going to hire a new GM? Is David Griffin in the mix? Have you heard anything over there?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the league-wide assumption that they will go after David Griffin. But, I think they said when Colangelo left that it was, it was so sudden and the timing was so, really so bad for them with the draft and free agency looming that, they made it clear they weren't necessarily going to rush into anything and feel the need they have to have a GM in place before free agency. So I think they can get by this summer, letting Brett Brown be the face of it, and then make a more measured approach, but it is the NBA. So with my luck, as soon as you post this podcast, I'll hire somebody. But it wouldn't shock me if they say, you know what, let's get through our business first, and then take a more measured approach to this thing.
So are you at all skeptical, or do you buy the whole fact that Jerry Colangelo's wife was the one behind the Twitter accounts? Because it's funny, when it broke, my wife looked at me and she said, "Listen, I've thought about setting up a Twitter account and going back at these idiots, who come at you on Twitter several times." And I'm like, "Really?" So it made me think, like, okay, you know what? At first I was completely skeptical and like, come on, this has got to be Brian Colangelo at the end of the day and not his wife. But now, after hearing that from my wife, I'm much more, willing to accept that his wife was the one leading the charge there.
And look, and I think the Sixers, they accepted that explanation as well, but were of the mind that it doesn't matter where they originated from. We can't go forward like this. And you can certainly understand them taking that position, but it's a really sad story. And it's still one that I haven't even quite figured out what smart to even say about it. Cause it's just, I don't know. It's those actions have, potentially ended Brian's NBA career. Now, maybe he can get back in. I mean, presumably someone will bring him back, as a consultant or, assistant GM. I mean, he'll I do think that's within the realm of the possibility, but the chance to run a team again is probably gone. And that's rough. It's rough.
Last question for you. Jared Dudley, when I asked him kind of the most underrated free agent, he said DeAndre Jordan. What have you heard about him and where he can end up? Because, Jared said, obviously defensively, he's a Rudy Gobert type. For a contender, for somebody like Toronto, could that kind of put him over the top and fit with the Raptors? Have you heard anything about DeAndre Jordan?
Here's the thing. I mean, he shouldn't be an under-the-radar free agent, but the thing people have to understand about this market, there's just not a lot of money sloshing around. So I think right now DeAndre Jordan's wrestling with, do I even opt out? Based on everything I've heard, I don't even think he's made that decision yet. He might say, I'm going to opt in and maybe try to force his way somewhere else via trade, because there just isn't a ton of money around. But no, I think Jared's obviously right. With the right team, with the defensive force that he can be, he's still a very productive player. Look, I mean, I think that's that's one of the guys that LeBron James really wanted in Cleveland. He really wanted the Cavs to try to find a way to trade for DeAndre Jordan, because defense, rebounding, defense, especially having a real rim protector, that's always been a major issue for these Cavs. I mean, they were 29th in the league in defense during the regular season. So, it's going to be interesting to see. Everyone's kind of expecting this off-season fireworks show.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see if that's actually what we get, given how tight the money is around the league.
Well, especially too, I mean, after you go LeBron, there'll be a lot of talk about Kawhi, but after that, I mean, KD's going to stick.
Philly's a team that has money, and they're a team that we've all put in the LeBron mix. But if they don't get LeBron, where do they turn? I mean, it's not clear at this point. And so,
do you bring back Redick? I mean, you got to bring back JJ Redick at another 1-year deal if you're Philly.
There's quite a big drop off after LeBron James.
Yes.
In terms of impact. So, yeah, last season was such a good offseason. I mean, that was what was so amazing. The Warriors won the championship, and everyone branded them invincible. And then we got really the best offseason we probably ever had.
Yep.
And that was actually reassuring to see that teams didn't just say, you know what, let's play the long game. We can't compete with these guys. Teams didn't say that last season, but now I think it leads to this expectation that, we're going to just get that again. It's not that easy. It doesn't happen that often that 5, 6, 7 major games change teams in the NBA offseason. Yeah. We don't typically see that. So I'm going to be real curious to see how close this offseason lives up to expectations.
Well, maybe it'll be a little bit quieter for you. I'm sure you won't mind that to some extent, that you get a little more time with the family. But listen, I appreciate you coming on. One of the best people I've ever worked with back when we were at ESPN, and I appreciate everything you did for me. And like I said, try to enjoy the free agency, but maybe not too much.
I appreciate the kind words, pal.
Thanks, Marc.
Let's stay in touch.
You got it, man. Take care. And that'll do it for this episode of Good and Plenty. Remember, you can now subscribe to Good and Plenty on iTunes and on Stitcher. Thanks to Jerry Dudley, Marc Stein, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Good and Plenty.